In this assignment, I will demonstrate how to use R to import, manipulate, filter, and export data from a coffee shop dataset. I start off by loading the required packages using library, which help provide functions that can be used for working with different types of files, like the Excel one here. I then go on to set my working directory using the set working directory function. This is what tells R where my assignments are located, and afterwards I can use the get working directory to confirm that R is working on the correct folder. For the next step, I import the coffee shop CSV file using the read.csv function. I then go on to name the resulting dataset coffee v1. Here I use the string as factors equals false so that the text values will remain the same as characters or as character data instead of automatically being converted to factors. We then go on to use print to display the imported data and verify that it loaded correctly. Next, I remove the payment and tip columns by setting coffee v1 payment and tip equal to null to remove those columns from the dataset, and after that, I filter the data to where the records for the brev field is equal to yes. The squares in the brackets allow me to select only that row that meets the condition. This new dataset we will call coffee brev. For the next part of the assignment, I selected the 5 columns required and used write CSV to export the filtered dataset as coffeebrev.csv. Our row.names equals false argument prevents R from adding any row numbers as extra columns in our CSV file. In step 5, I import the newly created coffeebrev CSV file back into R as coffeebrev R1 to demonstrate that export file can be successfully imported and used again. And then in step 6, I filter the total columns to show only the records with a total between $5 and $6. I used the greater than or equal to operator for 5 and then the less than or equal to operator for 6. Our AND character here allows us to meet both conditions to be true. After I'd filtered the data, I added a new field called record, and here I use a sequence row numbers to create a sequential record number starting from 1, and then the end row determines how many rows are in our data set. Afterwards, I reordered the columns to appear in the following order: record, drink, total, brev, and order type. Once the dataset was prepared, I exported it to an Excel file using the write XLSX, and then saved the file as coffeebrevfinal.excel. In this next section, we create the HTML version of the final dataset. I open a file connection using the file function, and then use the write lines to manually create the HTML structure. I start by creating the HTML document, including our title and structured table, and then used a for loop to go through each column name and create the table headers. A second for loop goes through each row, while the other loop goes through each column within that row, allowing each value from our dataset to be placed within our HTML table cell. After all of our data is written, I close out the HTML table and our file connection, then go on to save the file as coffeebrevfinal.html. Finally, I created an XML version of the dataset where I open another file connection and start with the XML declaration and the main coffeebrev final element. Here, our for loops go through each record and create XML elements for the records, the drinks, the totals, brevs, and order types. To organize each row of the dataset turned into an XML format. Once all the records have been written, I close the main XML element and save it as coffeebrevfinal.xml. And then here at the very bottom, I use the cat statement to confirm that all of the assignment files were successfully created. And here I will show you my code running, and then we will see all of the different tables we had created right here to the right hand side.